Welcome to the NC DWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NC DWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 101 of the NC DWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are taking a brief hiatus from our master series to reflect on why your business is like running a marathon. We hear this comparison all the time to your business being in business, being like running a marathon. You hear that talked about. And so today we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at that for two reasons. One, as kind of a way of digesting the fact that there's now been 100 episodes of the NC DWI Guy podcast. And so it's that look back on the first 100 episodes. So a good time to kind of talk about that long game. But also, and more importantly, more personally, I ran a marathon this past weekend. And so there were some lessons learned in that physical experience, that physical challenge that really are comparable to your business and why it is a good comparison, the art of running a business to the process and training that goes into running a marathon. So we're going to talk about 10 ways in which operating a business is comparable to a marathon. So here we go. First of all, just want to actually, before we dive into the points, first of all, just want to say, again, the process of going through this development of the NC DWI Guy podcast and pushing towards 100 episodes and now into the unknown at this point. You know, I thought when I first started, it'd be cool to have 100 episodes. It'd be cool to get to episode 100. And last week, episode 100 was rolled out. And a lot of different formats that we presented things in with both guests and solo. Continue on varying that. Some of the podcasts have been focused on building your business. Others have been focused on specific DWI issues. But I have really learned a ton, as I mentioned in the last episode, during this process of recording these every week. And as I've gotten into the habit of this being a very regular ritual, it has become a part of my identity. You know, doing the podcast has become a part of my identity. Preparing for the podcast has become a part of my identity. Making sure that every episode gets released each week and delivered on time has become a part of my identity. And so that long-term training, that long-term process of working towards the next episode, continuing to get educated so I can put out next week's episode, continuing to invite guests and maintain new ideas coming on to the podcast. That's all become a part of the identity because I didn't just do it one time or two times or three times, but have now done it over 100 times. And as I continue to grow myself and grow the process, get better at inviting people onto the podcast, get better at really delving into the deep dive issues of branding and marketing and DWI specific content, hopefully this thing will only get better and better. It's been a process of trial and error up to this point. I'm starting to get to a point where there's going to be a more systematic approach to each episode and has been a more systematic approach to each episode. So hopefully it just continues to get better, but that only happens through that training and repeat process and learning and starting over and doing it again and again and again, really at this point with no end in mind. And that's the marathon mentality, right? That's the marathon idea, is just keep doing it. Just keep taking the next step. Just keep moving forward. Learn from past mistakes. In the case of a marathon, learn from your past runs, your training runs, and keep building the muscles so that you can deliver the long-term result. Now, in terms of my actual marathon experience, this is my first marathon that I have ever run. So it was the first go at a marathon, and it was an absolute blast. I have behind me my participation medal. So let me grab that. Here we go. Here's the participation medal for running the marathon. And normally I'm not a fan of participation medals for myself or for my kids. Like wearing a participation medal normally would bother me. But for me, the primary goal, as we'll get into later in the episode, was actually finishing the marathon. I wasn't really concerned primarily about time, wasn't concerned primarily about the specific place that I would come in. That wasn't the goal. It was about completing the marathon. So the fact that I did complete the marathon and got the participation award was the primary thing that I wanted to walk away with. So just an absolute blast in terms of getting to the finish line. The whole training process there, it was just such an amazing physical and mental, almost like spiritual experience. And as we go through each of the 10 ways in which running a marathon is like running your business through this episode, you'll kind of see some of those individual experiences. But again, never ran a marathon before, first go at it, and really, really an incredible experience. So here is 10 ways that running your business is comparable to running a marathon. This is how you should think about your business, is as running a marathon. So one way is that is mindset. Mindset in a marathon, in terms of having the right mindset in a marathon, is very comparable to the mindset required for running a long-term successful business. In one way, running is lonely, particularly during the many training days that lead up to a marathon race. Running is lonely. And as a sole practitioner or somebody that works in a small office that is going and being the road warrior from county to county and district court, it's lonely sometimes out there. It's it feels like you're on your own. It feels like you don't have anybody else. And so there is a mindset required for that in terms of growth. You have to constantly be checking that mindset. Am I building myself to be able to do this over the long haul for a sustainable future? Do I have the right mindset? Difficult tasks sharpen the mind. Difficult things, going through difficult challenges, sharpen the mind. Preparing for a marathon, getting up and doing those lonely runs is a mental challenge more than it is a physical challenge. It takes work, and we'll talk about it here in just a couple of minutes. It takes work physically to run a marathon, but the mental preparation is what is so difficult about a marathon run. When you run a marathon, you are sharpening your mind more than you are sharpening any muscle in your body. You're building your mind more than you are building any muscle in your body when you prepare for a marathon run. It is so easy in training to just basically hit the snooze button. Hit the snooze button. Don't worry about getting up and running. Just hit the snooze button and move on to the next part of the day. The difficult thing is getting out of bed to put in those practice runs. I did my practice runs early. I try to get up every day at 4:30 on the weekdays. Sometimes that's been going great for weeks on end. Sometimes I've been terrible about getting out of bed at that time. but that is my go time. That's my free time in the day, is between about 4:30 and 6 in the morning. So if I'm not getting up at that time, I'm not getting my, spiritual reading in. I'm not getting my exercise in. I'm not getting my business reading in during that time frame. That is my time to improve myself, whether physically, mentally, or spiritually, those early hours. And so the hard part for me in terms of the marathon training was getting out of bed. Because if I got out of bed, I would go downstairs, normally do the few things that I have to do before I would get into the car and drive to the Weaverville, downtown Weaverville, where I did most of my practice runs, drive downtown and hit the streets and start running. Once I started running, that part was easy. The training part was easy. The physical part, once I actually started moving my body, was fine. But it was the mental problem of getting out of bed that was so difficult. And that is so true for us in business as well, right? In business, most of the time, the things that you should be doing to improve your business. You should be studying marketing, studying branding, studying how to build your client experience. We know we should be doing these things. And the difficult thing really isn't reading the business book or attending the business seminar, growing our relationships with other business-minded people. It's just taking that first step of buying the book and sitting down and reading it, right? Once you get into it, it's easy to do the reading. It's that mental commitment to, I am going to do this at this specific time. For me, if I wanted to train for the marathon, it was, I've got to get up at 4:30 and start training, because otherwise it is not going to happen today. And when I missed it, and I did miss it a number of times, when I missed it on those days, I set myself back in the marathon. I set myself back in terms of what I could have achieved in the marathon because I didn't get up that day. Same thing in business. If you're supposed to be reading a business book a month, that's what you're committed to. You don't read it that month. You don't sit down, carve out the time and do it. You're losing. The reading is like the exercise in the marathon run. That's easy. It's the mental commitment that this Tuesday and every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m., I'm going to sit down and read this business book. When you stay with that mental commitment, when that mindset is, I am not going to leave this on the table, I'm not going to lose this hour, then you are going to grow your business. What is going to spring out of that dedication is going to be the business muscle will get built. And it's not because of the reading that you're actually doing. It's because of your commitment to that time frame, to yourself, to grow that business muscle. It is the mindset. That's where the building of the business happens. So, number one way that building your business is like running a marathon is mindset. Number two is training. It's mindset is not enough. Mindset, just pure mindset. If you just say, I'm going to will myself to doing this marathon, that's not enough. If you have not put in a practice run and you try to go run a marathon, it is going to be miserable. You're going to get very sick. You're going to not finish in the time that is allowed. And so you're going to never cross the finish line because there'll be nobody left there. Your body, you cannot will your body across the finish line. If you have not physically trained, it is not going to happen. My brothers and I trained for this marathon together. And one of the people that we were listening to as we were driving to the marathon the morning of is David Goggins, former Navy SEAL, all about mindset, basically saying you got to push your brain past what your body is willing to do, push your mind past where your body is willing to go. You have so much more left in your brain than your body is telling you that you have. And there is some truth to that. But when you hit the wall where your body in a marathon is going to go no further, you're done. You're done. You cannot will yourself to keep moving faster than your body is going to allow you to move. You can keep moving forward. You can drag yourself across the finish line if need be, but your speed is going to depend on how much practice you put in. Same thing is true in building your business. Building your business absolutely depends on regularly thinking about your business. Again, mindset, you got to commit to that time of when you're going to sit down and think about your business, work on your business and not just in it. But then when that time comes, you got to put in the reps. You got to put in the practice. You got to build the business muscles by thinking about your business, reading books that will help you improve your business, thinking about how you can improve your client experience, bouncing your business ideas off of other firm owners. Again, you can set aside the time, but what are you consuming during that time to grow your business body, right? How are you going to grow your business? Well, that all depends on what reps you are doing during that time frame. How many sets are you going to do during that block? How many business sets are you going to do during that block? Got to build those business muscles if you are going to succeed. So way number 2, in terms of how your business is like running a marathon, is training. You got to eat business. You got to consume business in order for those muscles to grow, those business muscles to grow. Number 3, identity. This is important. This is an important question. It's something that I learned that I did not know until I was actually running. So I ran behind a 3-hour, 30-minute pacer. And one thing that I figured out as I was running and reflecting on the marathon afterwards was, are you a runner like the pacer was, or are you somebody that's running a marathon like me? Okay, here's the difference. A pacer is somebody who is identified themselves as a runner. This guy that was running the 3-hour, 30-minute pacer role, he was a runner. I was somebody running a marathon. This guy was a machine. He was holding a sign pretty upright for the first 7-8 miles, and then kind of let it go down. But that was because there wasn't that many people, and everybody that was with him knew who he was. At the beginning, it's kind of like who's kind of with me. By mile 7-8, he had it figured out who was actually kind of following him in terms of that pacer role. And so didn't really have to kind of attract any attention, but he's holding up the sign. He's checking directions regularly to make sure that he's not missing any of the turns, but he was a machine. This guy would stop at like every third water station, get a glass of water, just keep on trucking, didn't slow down, never stopped to stretch, never stopped because he had to cramp or check on anything, tie his shoes. At one point consumed almost nothing food intake wise during this entire race. I was consuming calories almost every mile, putting something in, putting a gel in, doing something almost every mile. This guy, the only thing that I saw him consume, which is so ridiculous, but towards the end of the marathon, he threw a donut hole down, didn't even seem to be breaking a sweat at the end of the race. Just trucking along, and he finished right at 3 hours, 30 minutes. This guy was a machine because he was a runner. I was somebody running a marathon. I was sweating like a dog. I was dying by the end of the race, basically waiting on my muscles to crap out on me. I felt like my right hamstring was going to explode. My calves felt like they were literally on fire, could barely walk at the end of this thing. He's having a conversation with me about mile 18, having a conversation, talking about, I was actually yelling at one of my brothers, "Hey, we got a David Goggins this," and he was saying, "Oh, I knew David Goggins. He was in my same, my same community that where I lived at one point," and just the whole race, whoever was around him, he would talk to, he would encourage people. He just didn't seem to have a problem. And when he started talking to me, I was like, "Look, dude, this is a one-way conversation. You're getting no response back." Because I'm not in the shape that you are in. This guy was a runner. I was somebody that was running a marathon. That is a humongous difference in your business. Are you a DWI master, like we've talked about here in recent weeks, or are you somebody that is handling criminal defense cases? It is a humongous difference in your business. Are you somebody that owns a law firm, just like somebody that's running a marathon, or are you a legal business owner? Are you somebody that runs a law firm, or is your identify, I own a legal business? Being a man of business, being a woman of business, somebody that is in and out thinking all the time about how their legal business is operating? Or are you just somebody that has put up a shingle, has a couple of business cards, and this is just a way of earning money? Your identity. If you identify as the owner of a legal business and not just as somebody that runs a law practice, it is a massive mindset difference. Your identity in business is so important. And that was something that, again, reflecting on the difference between me and this pacer that was in the run, humongous difference between the two of us. His identity was as a runner. Mine was as somebody that basically decided on spur of the moment to run a marathon. And there was a huge difference in terms of our performance based on that different identity. Another thought in terms of the importance of identity when it comes to your business is that business isn't really like running a marathon. So we're actually going to be a little bit like outside the box here for a second. Running a business is not like running a marathon in this sense. When you run a marathon, there is a certain start point and a certain end point, and you know when that end is coming. It ends at 26.2 miles. It's done at that point. And you know that throughout the whole race, you've got to make it 26.2 miles. Business is not like that. There is no end. It is an infinite game, as Simon Sinek says. Business is like being a long distance runner. It's not like running a marathon like me. It's being a long distance runner like the pacer, because the long distance runner is running repeat marathons and 5Ks and 10Ks. Maybe this guy's running 50Ks. Maybe he's running 100-mile races. I don't know what other types of races. But again, it's the difference between running a race, one race, and being a runner who is always training, always getting better. Yes, running some races, engaging where he stands in the field of competition, but then just going back to the process of running. Total different mindset, total different identity between the person that is a long distance runner and the person that is running one race, running a marathon. So number 3, comparing your business to running a marathon, identity, knowing who you are. Number 4, accountability. The power of accountability is so important. It's so huge, so ridiculous. And the beautiful thing about running this marathon is that I got to train with my brothers, my two younger brothers, and one of my brother's friends who lives in Asheville. And constantly for the 4 months leading up to this marathon, we would send each other pictures of the runs that we had done on Strava or on the treadmill or wherever we were recording these things. Send pictures. Hey, here's my time. Here's my pace. Here's how many miles I put in. And that kind of like healthy competition, but also much more importantly, that healthy encouragement that came from that accountability team made the training so much sharper. I didn't want to miss out on a week of training because of the fact that I knew my brothers would be waiting on that. They would be posting something. Hey, where's Jake this week? Right? Where is, are you putting in the miles? Are you putting in the miles like we are? We committed to this thing. Are you in? And the crazy thing about that commitment, the crazy thing about pushing each other to the limits is to some extent, you know where each other's limits are at that point. And the wild part of this marathon, I was running for over 3.5 hours. The wild part of this marathon is that my two brothers and I finished within 7 minutes of each other. 7 minutes in a 3.5 hour plus race. That is a crazy spread in terms of how close those timed finishes were. And I believe that the biggest reason for that closeness of time is we knew where each other was. We were pushing each other, and we kind of each knew where the kind of highest point landed, approximately where the best time was going to be. So you're pushing each other in that direction. And it was a wild thing to see that close of a finish between the three of us because of how we were pushing one another. The power of accountability is so important. It required one another to put in the practice reps. You felt bad like you're letting somebody else down if you didn't put in the practice reps. It was so important to put in those practice reps every single week. Same thing is true in business. You've got to have accountability partners. You've got to have people that are pushing you. This is why having a coach, but also different groups that you are a part of, push you to a better business. This is so important, right? Why they have mastermind groups or local business clubs that you can be a part of is because when you get in the room with other business owners and learn what they're doing and see how they are constantly pushing the envelope, it calls you to do the same. And the more accountability you can tie into those relationships, the better. The more that we can push one another to improvement by having specific goals that we are holding each other accountable to, the better. I mean, this is why AA works, because you have an accountability structure. People are able to beat some of the darkest, most disturbing demons on planet Earth simply because other people are holding their feet to the fire. So number 4, in terms of how business is like running a marathon, is accountability, or at least for me, that was one of the lessons, was the importance of accountability. Number 5, are you process-oriented or result-oriented? And so number 5 is really being process-oriented in a marathon and in business. This morning when I woke up, I have an accountability partner at the office. Speaking of accountability partners, I have accountability partner at the office, Maya, who is one of the paralegals in our Gastonia office. Amazing person. She has been sending me texts around 4:30 every day for the last, I think, probably 4 months at this point, basically holding me accountable to waking up at the time that I want to wake up. She does it by auto-generated text the night before. She doesn't get up at that time, but she has taken the time out of her schedule to help get me up at that time, which is pretty amazing. Like I'm really so full of joy about the fact that she is such a great teammate, such a great accountability partner. It really is cool. And I feel like I'm letting her down every single time that I don't get up at 4:30, which has been too often over the last quarter. One of the first things that come to mind when I don't hit that 4:30 goal is, man, I'm letting Maya down. So Maya sends me a question every day. Sometimes it's a riddle. Sometimes it's, hey, what was your favorite class in college? Just some random question about life or past experience. Basically something that I have to respond to so that it's clear that I got up at that time, at the 4:30 time. And so this morning she sent me a question, which was, what was your favorite part of the marathon? So I thought about that. And here's the favorite part for me. It was training with my brothers. It wasn't the race itself, which was amazing, an incredible experience, something to feel good about at the end, the people along the way, the build up to that, crossing the finish line. Wasn't any of that. It wasn't even race day. It was training with my brothers. That was what was so cool. And I actually got to run the race with my brothers, but I didn't see them very much the whole race. So it wasn't really running the race. It was training with them and having that group chat going back and forth, posting, encouraging each other and posting the runs. That was what was so powerful for me, was the process of training. It wasn't the result of crossing the finish line. It wasn't the result of a 3-hour, 32-minute finish. That wasn't what was so powerful. It wasn't the experience of being on the back end and knowing that I had completed that. It was the training. It was training with my brothers, and the camaraderie and the brotherhood, so to speak, of that training program was so powerful. And in business, it is the same thing. The second that we get so hung up on the result, maybe having the best year we ever had, right? Maybe it's hitting some certain financial goal. Maybe it is some certain case that you get some great result on. And it feels so good to have the not guilty or to have whatever financial goal that you hit. But at the end of the day, if you don't love the process of doing what you do and practicing it and waking up and putting in the hours at the office, putting in the hours of building the business, it's not going to work long term. If you don't love the process, you're in big trouble in business. Just like in a marathon, if you don't enjoy the process of training, it's going to be real hard to get the result you're wanting in the marathon. Same thing is true in life. Same thing is true in business. If you are not process oriented, if you are result oriented, you are going to have a hard time. You've got to love the process. You've got to enjoy the journey. Number 6, systems. Systems are so important in running a marathon, and they're so important in business. When I went into running this marathon, I was blind. I went in blind, totally unprepared, didn't know what I was doing. Then, basically my thought process was, I'm just going to put in as many miles in pre-race as possible. Basically, whatever my time, whatever my schedule allows, as much as I can cram in, I'm just going to run mile after mile after mile. And that's helpful. That's good. I mean, it wasn't the worst strategy for somebody that had never done this kind of race before. My previous long distance race before this was a 5K. My previous long run before this was about 8 miles. That was the longest that I'd ever run prior to training for this marathon. So my thought was just put in as many miles as possible, build up the muscles as much as possible, and that should do the trick. Wrong. If you are wanting to succeed in a marathon, you've got to get serious about systems, serious about what you are doing to prepare. What do I eat? Pre-race, during the race, my thought process was, hey, maybe pre-race, maybe the night before the race, I'm going to buy a steak and eat a giant steak and salad. Wrong. That's not the right answer. Consume a bunch of carbs, consume pasta, pizza, consume a bunch of carbs. Get a ton of carbs in your system so that your body can easily break that down. During the race, my thought process was, I don't really need to eat during the race. Wrong. You want to be consuming a ton of calories, and you got to be very diligent in actually consuming those calories during the race, planning what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it, when you're going to put it in your body, how many times are you going to stop for water, how many times are you going to stop to stretch. You got to have an answer for when will I take a break. You got to know that ahead of time. If you don't know that ahead of time, you're in big trouble. If you start to cramp up, you start to think, should I stop? Should I relax? Should I try to stretch for a few minutes? If you don't have a system in terms of how much you're going to drink during a marathon, you're in trouble. You're going to get dehydrated and just bomb towards the end of the race. You got to figure out how you're going to relax your muscles. Am I going to take any Advil after a certain training run? Am I cooling my muscles down? Am I taking a bath? Whatever it might be, you've got to have all of these things that seem ridiculous. Do I have the right footwear? Have I trained in this footwear before? You have to have all of these things figured out if you're going to give yourself the best chance of posting a good time in a marathon. The devil is in the details in business as well. It's not enough to just clock in at 8 o'clock in the morning and clock out at 5. You can do something with that. If you clock in to your office at 8 o'clock in the morning and you clock out at 5, that'll work. I mean, you'll be able to have a practice. You'll be able to serve clients. But if you are not getting insanely detailed about your system for handling phone calls, for handling marketing, for handling your case timeline, for making sure that you are providing a wow experience at every step of the way. If you're going to have other people work with you, having a very detailed, organized, and great producing, result producing hiring process, all of this knowledge needs to be getting turned into systems. It can't just be haphazard. It can't be the way that I was planning to train for this, which is, I'll just run as much as possible. I'll go on a long run and then on a short run. You've got to have a schedule. When am I running? For how long? Is this a speed run? Is this a pace run? Am I trying to go a little bit under pace? You have to have a detailed schedule for when your practice runs are going to occur. You got to have them built in. That is a system. That is a training schedule system. You got to know when you're going to eat. Again, what is your goal in terms of how many calories you're putting in? Same thing for preparing for a marathon as running a business. It can't be haphazard. It can't be happenstance that is running your business. You have got to get your systems down right if you want to have a good finish time in a marathon, if you want to have a highly successful business when it comes to running your law firm. Number 7 is about goals. Goals are so important. Goals really depend in a lot of ways on the stage you are of your business, or in the context of a marathon. Is this your first marathon or your 10th? What are your goals for the marathon? For me, my primary goal was to finish the race. Primary goal was just to finish, just to get to the finish line. Didn't care if I did it 4 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours. Really, at the end of the day, that was not the main concern. It was basically, I wanted to say that I had run a marathon. My very shallow goal, my very shallow thought process was, I just want to be able to communicate to other people that I've run a marathon and be in the marathon club, so to speak. Nobody really cares. Most people don't really care what your time is unless they're actual runners. And then they're going to be like, well, at least you ran a marathon. But everybody else is just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you ran that many miles. So it was mostly about having completed that physical challenge. The secondary goal, but very much secondary and based on nothing, was a time. My brother, who invited me to do the marathon, asked me shortly after, hey, what would be your goal in terms of time? And I really had no idea. I've ran for a long time. So I kind of knew what my 4 to 6 mile run times were, but anything over 10 miles was complete no man's land. And so I said, really without putting much thought in it, 3 hours and 30 minutes sounds pretty good. That sounds like a pretty good goal. Trained, really didn't think a whole lot about like trying to hit that specific time in training or connecting my training runs to trying to hit that specific time. It was basically run as many miles as I can at as fast a pace as possible that I can run those miles in. But I ran the marathon in 3 hours, 32 minutes, and 22 seconds. 2 minutes and 22 seconds off of my goal. And this is the importance of having goals. It gives you something mentally to shoot for, even if it's not very specific. And you want your goals in business, in marathon running, in life as specific as possible. So I don't, challenge you to go the Jake Minnick route of setting goals. Setting a goal of finishing a race or just, a total wacky, 3 hours and 30 minutes. It is not the great way to set goals. You want your goals to be specific, attainable, thought out, well planned. You want to put a lot of time into those goals and have lofty goals. But at the end of the day, having any goal is better than nothing. Having something to set your sights on is better than nothing. Put a goal out there, and then as you achieve that goal or as you fail at that goal, adjust it and make it more specific. Make it more important to your business. Your goals, your KPIs, whatever you are measuring is going to change as your business grows and develops. But it is extremely critical that you have goals to shoot for. Again, my goal was really based on no knowledge. It was based on no prior experience of doing this. It wasn't based on any well thought out plan. But I very damn near hit that goal because I said it. I put it out loud. I told my brother, here's what I'm shooting for. And then I repeatedly told other people that. And at some point it was just like, well, this is just what I'm going to say. And maybe I come in at, 3:45, maybe I come in at 4 hours and 30 minutes. Who really cares at that point? Like, again, my goal was primarily to finish the race, but having that 3:30 goal was critical because it was something to shoot for. It was something to shoot for. And I spoke that goal out loud to other people in your business. You should have specific goals and proclaim them. Put them out there to your team, put them out there to the community, because the more you speak that goal into existence, the more likely it is to be realized. The more you tell other people, the more real it gets in your head, the more real it becomes in life. So number 7, goals. Need them in a marathon, need them in business. Number 8, this is a big one. Number 8, ways that a marathon is like running a business. Running a marathon is like running a business. You are competing against yourself. In a marathon and in business, you are competing against yourself. It was amazing to be out there in that marathon running, because you kind of think of a race as I am competing against other people. In the case of the Asheville marathon, half marathon, you're starting out with over 1,000 other people to take off for this race. So it feels like you're competing against all these other people. And again, I'm not a big race runner. I've ran one 5K before this and then this race. So I don't have like very much racing experience with my during the 5K. I was mostly running with my son. And so I wasn't even in like a competitive mindset very much in that race. It was just, I was there to encourage him and be kind of supervising him. He was, I think around 8 at the time that he ran that. So it wasn't like he was going to run this thing alone. So I was mostly just kind of in a non-competitive mindset, and it was a non-competitive 5K. I mean, there was a couple of serious people, but for the most part, it was like families and, people having a good time. So not anything too crazy. I expected this was going to feel like super competitive. No. Every other runner that you passed was encouraging, uplifting, telling you to keep going, keep after it, don't stop. Everybody was encouraging one another. And every time my brothers and I would pass each other, or Stuart, the other guy that was training with us, would pass each other, it was encouraging. Yeah, Stuart was awesome because he just, this was my brother's friend. He just, every time he would pass, he would shout like almost at the top of his lungs, "Go, Jake, keep going." And I could barely like respond back. I would just like fist pumped or clapped a couple of times. I mean, I was pretty rough on the return applause, but it was amazing how everybody else out there on the course was really just trying to get you to go faster. Again, you'd think if you wanted to win the race, you'd want everybody else to have a problem, to break down, to start feeling tension so that they're struggling and you can pass. No, because what everybody recognizes in a marathon is you're competing against yourself. You've got a time that you have set for yourself to pass the finish line at, and that's who you are playing against. You're playing against yourself. Your number one opponent is you. And same thing is true in business, right? Every other criminal defense attorney across the state, we're not competing with one another. We're not competing with each other. We are competing against ourselves. We are trying to get our own businesses better. We are trying to make our own practices better. This is Simon Sinek's message in The Infinite Game. You're not competing against anybody else. You're competing against yourself. You're trying to improve yourself every day. And in both the training of the marathon and in the running of the race, the person I found out that I was competing against was me. Everybody else that I was running with was nothing but supportive, encouraging, and a cheerleader. That's how we want to find the criminal defense bar too. And that when we really step back and think about it, that's what the criminal defense bar is. It's everybody else running the race, trying to make their own practices better, trying to build themselves better, into better lawyers, into better leaders, into smarter attorneys, into attorneys that provide a better client experience, into better business people. That's the race that we are running in business. So number 8, you are competing against yourself. Number 9, mentorship, leadership, if we want to call it that in this particular case. But the number 9 way in which I found the marathon to be similar to business was in mentorship. And I'm going to go back to my man, the pacer, the 3-hour, 30-minute pacer that I was following. Having a leader to follow in the race, having somebody else that knew what the heck they were doing in the race was so important. So important. My ability to be mentally free by just following that leader, that pacer, made the race so much easier. I didn't have a phone or a watch on for the first half of the marathon. I listened to music during the second half of the marathon. For the first half of the marathon, I kept my watch off and I just followed the pacer. I didn't have to worry about split times. I didn't have to worry about mileage times. I didn't have to worry about how many miles we had done. I didn't have to worry about being on the right path. I didn't have to think about, am I making the right turn at this next juncture? I'm just following the guy that is going to run the marathon in 3 hours and 30 minutes. And if that's my goal, I'm going to stay on course with him as long as possible. And I was able to do that until mile 23, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But just follow that guy, and he's going to get me to where I need to be. That was so easy. It was so awesome to have zero mental pressure in terms of, am I keeping the right pace? Am I moving at the right speed? follow the dude with the 3:30 sign, and that is it. That's all I got to do. If I just keep running with him, then I'm going to hit my goal. When you have a good mentor, you are in really good shape. This is why having a coach, having a mentor is so important, because they know the path. They know the way to success. They know the plan. They have the strategy already figured out. You don't have to think about it. You got to find somebody that you can follow in that way. You got to find somebody that you can push forward on and follow in that way. Beyond that, beyond just finding somebody that you can follow, this is who you need to be within your own business. You need to be the mentor. You need to be the leader. Everybody else should be following you. And if they don't know where you're going, if they feel like you're doubling back or going in circles, or you're stopping all the time for water breaks, and they're like, hey, are we going to get back running again? You're causing problems within your organization. But if you are just staying steady and strong at the same pace, you have a clear direction in mind, and people know where you're going and when you are going to get there, it is easy to follow you. Just like it's easy to follow the pacer. Be the pacer of your business. Number 10, got to have a support system. Number 10 way in which running a marathon is like running your business, you got to have a support system. It's so awesome to have other people cheering you on during this like really challenging, physical, mentally exhausting experience of running a marathon. My wife and my kids were there for the last mile. I got to see them at around mile 25, and then they were there at the finish line. And I was broken at that point. I don't necessarily need as much encouragement at mile 5, at mile 10, at mile 15. At mile 25, I was dragging. I was about to be broken. So having them, just seeing them there and having them be there in that support framework was so critical. My brother's wife, Mary, and her kids were there for pretty much the whole race. And so we passed them 4 times, I think, 4 or 5 times during the race. And every time she'd be out there, their oldest, Henry, would be like, he's 5, he's out there waving you on. And it just felt good to have other people cheering for you. It was great. Then you had random spectators at the start line, at the finish line, along the race. There was one girl out there with pom-poms, another group of people that were dressed up like some crazy Care Bears or some nutty costumes, but so into it, and cowbells and pom-poms, just this mindset of hey, keep rocking it, keep going, and having that support is so powerful. Other runners along the way, people I had never met before, felt like they were encouraging me. My pacer was constantly looking back and be like, come on, let's do it. Let's keep going. There was another guy that was running with that pacer in me, and he was pushing me as we passed each other along like the last less than mile stretch. There was a turnaround right before the finish line. We passed each other, and the look of like camaraderie was something special for somebody that I literally met during the race. Well, I wouldn't even introduce myself. We gave a fist bump at one point, like, hey, yeah, we're in this group. And that was it. That was the introduction, a fist bump. Too tired to talk, too tired to say hello. Hey, we're doing this together. Let's get it on. Let's finish this thing together strong at the time that we are hoping to achieve. Powerful. You need that in business. If you're going to run a successful business, you need your family on board. You need your wife and kids on board. You need your extended family on board, or at least it's helpful. Maybe you don't need that, but it is helpful to have that, hugely helpful to have that. So you got to figure out a way to kind of be on the same page so you can keep that support system strong within your family. You need fans, right? You need happy customers. You need people that are shouting your praises from the rooftops. That's what a Google review is. It is a random spectator at a marathon race. It is somebody that is cheering for you. and telling other people, hey, look how good this guy's doing. Look how good this gal's treating me. So powerful, so helpful. You need other runners along the way encouraging you. That's why having other friends and mentors and colleagues in the criminal defense bar is so powerful, because you can bounce cases off of one another and, rejoice in each other's wins, sorrow in one another's losses. Having that support system, that support framework is so vitally important to practicing, to building your business. So just like running a marathon, in the game of business, you need a good support system. So there is 10 ways, and I'm going to give you a bonus way. I'm going to give you a bonus way in which running a marathon is like running your business. And this is where we're going to end. Don't quit. When I was running the marathon, I originally wanted to wear my St. Joseph t-shirt because it was the solemnity of St. Joseph, but like the tight fittingness of that shirt, and it was a little bit thicker. I decided at the last minute to go with a looser fitting and kind of more breathable shirt. I'm glad that I did. Honestly, probably saved myself a lot of nipple pain by going with the latter option. Sorry to get graphic on here, but that's was a good choice. Let's just say that was a good choice. Still got to celebrate St. Joseph's Day later with a hamburger cookout and a beer with my brothers and family. So that was a blast. But the shirt that I wore was "Don't Quit," and a shirt from Chris Video Group. Very powerful message. This was such a important thing to remember along the way. And the beauty of wearing that shirt was that people that I would pass, the spectators that I would pass, would shout that out at me. This is why it's important to wear a good message and to have a good brand. They would shout instead. I don't know what they were telling everybody else. Keep going. You're doing great. You're almost there, whatever it might be. But routinely when I passed, they would be like, "Don't quit, don't quit." That was cool. And it was the messaging. They were mirroring the messaging on my own shirt, but it was a powerful message to hear. Don't quit. Like I said a couple of minutes ago, mile marker 23 was the breaking point. I was staying exactly with the pacer until mile 23. Guy was going to cross the finish line at 3 minutes, 30 seconds. I was just a few steps behind him, and the only person still with him at that point, I'm kind of proud of that, only person still with this particular pacer at mile 23. And then all of the sudden, I felt like my hamstring was going to explode. You know, that moment right before you have a muscle cramp where you can just feel it tighten, it happened. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. So I stopped for a second to stretch. There was a water station kind of real nearby. I stopped for a second there, got a couple of waters and started back. I saw the pacer continue on. And at first I was like, I'm going to move as hard as I can towards him. And then my calf started feeling weird, my right calf. And it had been feeling a little bit, for 4 or 5 miles, I've been feeling tight. Now it started to feel like it was going to just give. So for the last 3 miles, 5 or 6 times, had to stop to stretch, basically just praying my guts out. Lord, please don't let my muscles give out right now. Like, I'm so close to the finish line. I know I'm going to finish this thing walking, but I would love to be able to finish running. So, just that, idea that, gosh, if I could just get across that finish line, and the don't quit mentality is so important in those moments where it's just like, okay, this is where it's getting hard. Normally it comes when you are either close to the finish line or going through something very difficult that you feel like you're going to quit, right? When you just feel like you're going through something that is so problematic, so overwhelming, you just feel like giving up. Don't stop. Don't quit. Never give in, never give up, as Winston Churchill said, right? Keep going. Jocko Willink has this great clip where he basically says, take the next step. That's the key to success. Take the next step. Don't worry about what's going to happen a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road, 10 miles down the road. Right now, take the next step. Keep moving forward. Take the next step. Don't quit. Don't give up. That is the key to building a successful business. When things feel hard, when things feel overwhelming, when you feel stressed out, when you feel beat down, when you feel knocked out, stand back up, take the next step. Don't quit. Don't stop moving towards your dream. Don't stop running towards your goal. Looking forward to continuing this conversation with you all for the unknown future. There's no more end game. Originally, my thought process was, let's get to 100 episodes. And that was kind of the game. Now there's no end goal. It's just, how can we use this opportunity, this time that we have on this podcast? How can I use this to better my own mind? And how can I use it to help other attorneys better theirs? The game is infinite now. I don't plan on quitting. Neither should you. Look forward to speaking with you next time. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.